Chapter 35. Mouse. By the time Uitt left Jason McLeod's house, the morning rush was over and the roads were quiet. Following the Lexus through suburban turnings was tricky. Dana had to keep Uitt's car in view, but couldn't get close in case he suspected that he was being followed. Should have brought a tracking device ourselves, James observed. Dana shook her head. They work through the control room on campus, so it would have blown our cover. James wondered if their disappearance from campus had been noticed yet, as Uitt pulled onto a stretch of dual carriageway and squeezed the gas, accelerating past 80 miles an hour. The road was ideal for following, with enough traffic to be inconspicuous, but not so much that you risked getting boxed in. Even so, a single car pursuit is never easy, and there were a few hairy moments when they thought they'd lost the Lexus. After a 40-minute cruise, they took a horn blast from a white van as they swerved into the near side lane and followed Uitt onto a slip road. Even worse, the road ended at a set of lights, giving Dana no option but to pull up directly behind Uitt. The Golf's side windows had a slight tint, but the front screen was clear glass. James and Dana spent a full minute staring into their laps, hoping Uitt didn't look back in his mirror and recognize them. It felt like much longer. They lucked out, but Dana and James knew it was only a matter of time before Uitt rumbled them. She stayed as far back as she could, while they wound down a country lane with frosty grass and cows with steamy breath on either side of them. As they approached a small market town, Uitt took a sharp left turn. Dana was being tailgated by a truck and realised that she'd get crunched if she broke sharply and attempted the turn. "You've lost him," James complained. "I couldn't brake with that thing up my ass," Dana said, as James looked over his shoulder and saw what she meant. Dana indicated left and turned into the gravel parking lot of a country pub. She swung around in a full circle and edged the nose of the car out past a hedge, attempting to turn back and catch up with Uitt. "Oh, get a move on," Dana moaned as traffic streamed by in both directions. Half a minute drained away before she jabbed the accelerator, causing an oncoming car to brake sharply as she threw the steering wheel around to avoid a metal gate on the opposite side of the road. Dana turned off the main road into a curving street more than 2 minutes after Uitt had done so. There was a riverbank off to one side, with willow trees overhanging the water and a sign advertising boat trips. Service resumes summer 2007. The opposite side had a row of mock Tudor tourist traps selling antiques, cream teas, and Union Jack souvenirs. "I can't stand places like this," James said, as he scanned the coachloads of pensioners dawdling along the narrow pavements, hoping to spot Uitt. "Do you reckon he got out around here?" Dana glanced at the map on the sat-nav screen. "Well, it's not on the way to anywhere else, so I guess we'd better park up somewhere and take a look." "I just hope we see him before he sees us," James said warily. Then he spotted the nose of a large silver Audi poking out of a narrow lane 50 meters ahead of them. "Hello, old friend," he grinned. "Result," Dana nodded. "We might not know where Uitt is, but they sure do." The traffic was light, so Dana flashed her headlamps and let the big Audi pull out ahead of them. Dana followed it through a couple of tight turns and quickly realised that the driver was following the blue parking arrows. They ended up in a tarmac space the size of a couple of football pitches. There were barriers and ticket booths, but there were less than 24 cars in the whole space. The gates were locked open, and bright yellow signs told them that winter parking was free. There's Uitt's Lexus, James said, relieved, as the silver Audi pulled up alongside it. Dana rolled on for another 50 metres and parked next to an abandoned shopping trolley. What do you reckon? James asked. Sit here and wait for Uitt to come back, or go walkabout? What are we going to find out by sitting here? Dana asked. James shrugged. But we've got no idea where he's gone. If we go, what's to stop him coming back to his car and driving off without us seeing him? Dana sucked air through her teeth. Tell you what, she said after a few seconds' thought. I'll wait here in the car, you go off looking for Uitt. Zip your jacket and pull the hood over your head. He won't recognise you if you keep your distance. As James left the car, he noticed that the red-headed young woman was getting out of the Audi, its two occupants having clearly decided on the same strategy. James walked slowly towards a signpost at the edge of the car park. It had arrows pointing towards various attractions. Watermill, St. Peter's Chapel, boat trips, picnic area, lavatories. It was 12:15, so James guessed that Uitt would probably be heading towards the restaurant for his lunch date with Sarah Thomas. They'd passed quite a few eateries on the ride through town. James's first thought was to walk back and see if he could spot Uitt inside any of them. But then he realised that the woman from the Audi was moving with a sense of purpose. She'd probably spotted Uitt on the street, and James decided to go after her. She led him through a couple of winding back streets to a glass-fronted building built on the riverbank. One end had a queue of more than a dozen people huddled against the cold. The front of the line brought elderly customers to a window that served hot drinks and homemade pasties. The opposite side was an Italian restaurant, and James felt a shot of adrenaline as he spotted Uitt leaning against a swanky bar, clearly waiting for someone to arrive. The woman from the Audi passed through the large glass doors and seated herself on a leather stool, 2 spaces clear of Uitt. James couldn't go inside because Uitt would recognise him if he got close, but he knew he looked dodgy lurking in the street with his hood up and his hands stuffed inside his jacket. After crossing the narrow road, James felt in his pocket to make sure that he had some money before joining the queue to buy a pasty. As the pensioners in front of him complained about the weather and the pasties costing more than last year, James peered over their heads, keeping an eye on anyone entering or leaving the restaurant. Jumbo traditional and a tea, please, James said, when he finally reached the front of the queue. It was a cold day. The pasties were being sold as fast as they came out of the ovens, and James's stomach growled as the woman passed over a paper bag containing a huge, freshly baked crescent of pastry. He sat down at a wooden picnic table as far as he could get from shivering pensioners and tore out a massive bite of shredded vegetables and beef. It was unbelievably hot. James spluttered as steaming potatoes stuck to the top of his mouth. He ended up spitting a lump of meat onto the pavement, to the obvious distaste of 3 oldies sitting 2 tables across. As he looked up, James saw a solidly built woman walking into the restaurant. She was middle-aged, slightly odd-looking, with a chubby red face and a padded envelope under her arm. Uitt smiled and shook his guest warmly by the hand as the woman from the Audi drained her glass and stepped out into the cold. She grabbed her mobile and dialed. James guessed she was calling her companion back in the car. He put his pasty down and took his walkie-talkie from inside his jacket. "Dana," he whispered. "Uitt's with Sarah Thomas now. It looks like the girl from the Audi is on the blower to her driver." "I'm listening to the Audi driver speaking with her," Dana said. "How have you managed that?" James asked, surprised. "There's toilets at the back of the car park. The driver got out to go for a pee, so I dashed over and put one of our sticky pads on his side window. Nice move. James grinned. I'll call you back, Dana said. I'm trying to find out what they're up to. James tucked his walkie-talkie away and took a more cautious bite out of his pasty. Inside the restaurant, a fit waitress was leading Uitt and Sarah Thomas to a table overlooking the river. James kept a discreet eye on them until his walkie-talkie spoke to him. The woman's name is Kate, Dana said hurriedly. I'm not sure if they're MI5 or private investigators, but they're definitely working for the Hiltons. Kate asked if McLeod had made any calls after Uitt left, so they must have his phone bugged. James ground his palm against his forehead with frustration. So Uitt's not working for Hilton? Certainly doesn't sound like it, Dana said. They seem to think Uitt is just some freelance journalist trying to stick his nose in. And apparently, Sarah Thomas is Madeline Cowell's former cleaning lady. So that's where she fits in, James said. She's brought Uitt a big envelope. No idea what's inside, but it must be evidence against Hilton. Cowell was Lord Hilton's loyal assistant for donkey's years. James shrugged. I guess her loyalty wore thin when her boss started bumping people off to protect his son. Cowell must have suspected that he was planning to top her and left a little sting behind. So what do you think will happen next? Dana asked. They're following Uitt. They think he's only a journalist, so I reckon they'll try and jump him and steal the evidence before he does anything with it. Agreed, Dana said. It'll either be when he leaves the restaurant or as he gets back in the car. I can warn him, but it might freak him out, so I'll have to wait until Sarah Thomas is out of sight. James had been starving when he first bought the pasty, but the tension had got to him. It now lay on the slatted wooden table in front of him, half-eaten and stone cold. Kate sat at the bar inside the restaurant with a burger, whilst Uitt and Sarah Thomas were finishing their dessert. Judging from the body language, Uitt was bored, while Sarah Thomas seemed like a lonely soul who was milking her chance of a free meal and a decent conversation. James had considered calling Uitt on his mobile, but he didn't have the number programmed into his brand new phone, and the campus hotline staff wouldn't give out that kind of information until they'd received lengthy explanations about what he and Dana were up to. James watched Uitt get up from the table. He shook Sarah Thomas's hand and gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Sarah gestured towards the ladies' toilet as James got off the wooden bench. Uitt tapped on his watch, indicating to Sarah that he was in a rush. As Uitt tucked the envelope under his arm and headed for the exit, Kate wiped her lips on a napkin and settled her bill by placing a £20 note inside her empty tumbler. James? Dana said. Yep, he replied as he put the walkie-talkie up to his ear. The Audi is backing out of its parking space, Dana said. Uitt's coming out of the restaurant with Kate on his tail, James said hurriedly. I wish I'd taken the stun gun out of your bag. Too late now, Dana said. Okay, I'm on the move, James said. I'll keep in touch. Uitt walked briskly, so Kate had to jog to catch up with him. Uitt heard her coming and looked backwards with a curious smile. James considered shouting a warning, but Uitt's expression changed from "Are you flirting with me?" to "Oh my God" before he got the chance. James couldn't see much from behind, but saw enough to realise that Kate had pulled a gun from inside her jacket. James's guts somersaulted as Uitt walked obediently into an enclosed courtyard behind the restaurant. For all he knew, Kate was planning to kill Uitt as soon as he was out of sight. The closest thing James had to a weapon was his Swiss Army knife. He pulled it from his pocket as the Audi tore down the road and swung sharply into the narrow yard. James peeked around the corner and saw Uitt looking extremely tense as Kate held a silenced pistol to his chest. She opened the back door of the Audi and gestured for him to get inside as a car horn blasted less than 20 meters away. James looked up and saw the red Volkswagen. Dana braked sharply before making the tight turn into the courtyard, but made a split-second decision to accelerate hard when she saw Uitt, Kate, the Audi, and the gun. Airbags exploded in Dana's face as the Volkswagen smashed into the back of the Audi, while the Audi ploughed into the courtyard wall. Both Uitt and Kate instinctively jumped clear as James began sprinting across the courtyard towards them. Uitt had kneed Kate in the chest and was twisting the gun from her hand. Once he had control of the gun, Uitt knocked Kate to the ground with a powerful kick and turned the pistol on James. "Don't shoot me!" James gasped, raising his hands in the air. Uitt hadn't recognized James with his hood up, but he immediately knew the voice. "What the hell are you doing here?" Uitt asked incredulously. "Behind you!" James pointed, as he watched the driver jumping out of the car holding another silenced pistol. Uitt swung around with the gun so that he and the driver had identical weapons pointing across, with their muzzles less than 20 centimeters apart. James was tempted to turn and run, but then he noticed Kate crawling towards Uitt. "Watch your leg!" James shouted, but the warning was too late. Kate plunged a hunting knife through Uitt's shoe and deep into his foot. As Uitt twisted around in pain, the Audi driver grinned. James was certain that Uitt was about to get a bullet through his head and that the driver would probably aim the next round at him. As James turned to run away, he heard a crackling sound. The driver collapsed to the ground with blue sparks lighting up his face. James realized that Dana had shot him with one of the stun guns. It was a huge relief, but they wouldn't be safe until they had both of the silenced pistols in their hands. Kate stabbed Uitt for a second time, hitting him in the thigh as she snatched the gun. James raced across the courtyard and dived forward, landing heavily on her chest. Her ribs crunched as he wrestled the gun from her hand. The front doors of the Audi were both open, and James found himself staring at Dana through the plush interior of the car. "Have you got the other gun?" Dana raised it limply. "Are you okay?" "Been better," Dana said. "My ears are ringing from the explosion. But thank God for airbags, eh?" "Ugh, why are you two here?" Uitt groaned as he looked at the growing patch of blood on his jeans. "You lied about the security tape," James said, as Kate rolled onto her side and began coughing up blood. "We thought you were working for Hilton." Dana had grabbed her mobile. "This is Agent 1162, she yelled. "I'm here with James and Uitt, and we've got a situation. The cops will be here any minute, and we need a response team to come and bail us out." Uitt was in a lot of pain from the 2 stab wounds, but still managed a tiny smile. "Whatever the reason, I reckon you two just saved my butt."